The great story here, for anybody willing to find it and write about it and explain it, is this vast right-wing conspiracy.
It's no secret that we're going up against some pretty powerful forces that will do and spend whatever it takes to advance a very different vision for America.
I'll tell you a couple of stories about fraud.
She didn't just delete tens of thousands of those emails, she wiped the server clean.
What, like with a cloth or something?
Personal emails are my personal business. You know, let's release everything. Let's let everybody in America see what I did for 4 years.
But as I said, I saw it as a matter of convenience, and it was allowed. Others had done it.
So that's all I could say.
The server will remain private.
Here's the problem. Their stories have not been the same up to this point. The State Department stories in the two cases have not been the same up to this point. That's why these two federal judges have personally gotten involved in an area where federal judges never get involved, called discovery, the gathering of evidence pre-trial. That's done lawyer against lawyer without a judge involved. You have two cases here. One a federal judge appointed by Ronald Reagan, one a federal judge appointed by Bill Clinton, both saying the same things about her. There's too much deception here. Mrs. Clinton, when you speak to me, you will certify under penalty of perjury that you're telling the truth.
We have turned over the server. They can do whatever they want to with the server to figure out what's there or what's not there.
Going through the emails, there were over 60,000 in total sent and received. About half were work-related and went to the State Department, and about half were personal.
When you speak to the public, you say, I turned over everything. That's, for the most part, a direct quote. When you talk to the public, you say, I turned over everything.
That's for the people investigating it to try to figure out. But we turned over everything that was work-related. Every single thing.
90 to 95% of my work-related emails were in the state system. If they wanted to see them, they would certainly have been able to do so. You know what?
That is maybe the 10th time you have cited that figure today.
It is.
And I have not heard anyone other than you ever cite that figure. Who told you that 90 to 95% of your emails were in the State Department system? Who told you that?
We learned that from the State Department in their analysis of the emails that were already on the system.
The Inspector General report found that less than 1% of State Department emails, record emails, were captured. So they give a number of less than 1%, and you give a number of 90%.
I have absolute confidence that everything that could be in any way connected to work is now in the possession of the State Department.
This pile represents the emails that you sent or received about Libya in 2011, from February through December of 2011. This pile represents the emails you sent or received from early 2012 until the day of the attack. There are 795 emails in this pile. We've counted them. There are 67 emails in this pile in 2012. And I'm troubled by what I see here. I can only conclude by your own records that there was a lack of interest in Libya in 2012.
What difference at this point does it make?
When I think back now to that day and what she knew, it shows me a lot about her character, that she would choose in that moment to basically perpetuate what she knew was untrue.
This was a fast-moving series of events in the fog of war, and I think most Americans understand.
How about more generally? Do you think there's something you can do to get a majority of Americans to believe you're trustworthy?
Hi, Secretary Clinton. Would you sign this for me?
Sure. What's your name?
If you can make it out to Christopher Stevens. I think you knew him.
Yeah, I'm not going to make it out to Chris Stevens.
What difference does it make?
Here it goes, here. The server contains personal communications from my husband and me.
Only time I got on the internet I did 2 emails, and I ordered Christmas presents from a reservation. Otherwise, I found people said embarrassing things on emails. I didn't want to be one of them.
I mean, and how many angels dance on the head of a pin? I have really nothing to. I mean, how do you answer that?
I feel sorry sometimes for the young people who, believe this. They don't do their own research.
I am so sick. I am so sick of the Sanders campaign lying about me. I'm sick of it.
Do you think New York State should recognize gay marriage?
No.
No. Okay.
I believe that marriage is between a man and a woman.
I do not support gay marriage. It really is great how long you've supported gay marriage.
Yes. I could have supported it sooner.
Well, you did it pretty soon.
Yeah. Could have been sooner.
Fair point. The unborn person doesn't have constitutional rights.
Are you saying that a child on its due date, just hours before delivery, still has no constitutional rights?
Under our law, that is the case.
I was a Goldwater girl.
I'm very proud that I was a Goldwater girl.
Goldwater was against the '64 Civil Rights Act.
40,000 people, half of them Negroes, demonstrate against Goldwater.
I am compelled to urge Negroes and all people of goodwill to vote against him. His election would be a tragedy and certainly suicidal almost for the nation and the world.
He's a very arrogant person to deal with, which I think is a combination of this vision of Russia and some fundamental insecurity.
I could have told him he was a KGB agent. By definition, he doesn't have a soul. I mean, this is a waste of time, right?
Как минимум, государственный деятель должен иметь голову.
Mrs. Clinton has never been too graceful in her statements. When people push boundaries too far, it's not because they are strong.
I remember landing under sniper fire. There was supposed to be some kind of a greeting ceremony at the airport, but instead we just ran with our heads down to get into the vehicles.
Her arrival in Bosnia was not quite as dramatic as Clinton put it.
Good to see you.
Once again, her memory doesn't match our videotape. She and her daughter Chelsea lingered on the tarmac to greet U.S. military officials. Took photos. There was the group of 7th graders on the tarmac too. And then Senator Clinton walked to the armored vehicle where she did eventually dock and enter.
During the parade in which she participated, her campaign roped off reporters so they wouldn't interfere with the candidate.
Memory should always match the videotape.
I have been a critic of NAFTA from the very beginning.
I think that NAFTA is proving its worth.
It was one of the highlights of President Clinton's first term, passage of the North American Free Trade Agreement, also known as NAFTA. Critics blame NAFTA for the loss of manufacturing jobs in industrial states, including Ohio and Pennsylvania. Hillary Clinton helped get NAFTA approved. She held at least 5 meetings to strategize about how to win congressional approval. She helped the White House block opposition from labor and environmental groups, and she was the featured speaker at a crucial meeting. Participants in that event said, quote, her remarks were totally pro-NAFTA.
Was NAFTA a mistake?
NAFTA was a mistake to the extent that it did not deliver on what we had hoped it would.
Your opponents are saying that that's really part of a larger pattern with you, that you often avoid taking firm positions on controversial issues.
They are going to people showing videos of Donald Trump insulting Islam and Muslims in order to recruit more radical jihadists.
Fact checkers have said that she was wrong.
All my grandparents, came over here, and
turns out only one was an immigrant, 3 were not.
And then, frankly, there are those who are saying the best thing that could happen to us is be attacked by somebody. Just bring it on, because that would unify us, it would legitimize the regime.
That's the reason I say, if anybody's going to do it, we ought to do it, because we have the capability of doing it.
We're not going to give anything up, and in fact, we're going to provoke an attack, because then we will be in power for as long as anyone can imagine.
I represented New York, and I represented New York on 9/11. When we were attacked, where were we attacked? We were attacked in downtown Manhattan, where Wall Street is. I did spend a whole lot of time and effort helping them rebuild.
That was good for New York, it was good for the economy, and it was a way to rebuke the terrorists who had attacked our country.
9/11 was bad.
I agree with that.
It's time for the United States to start thinking of Iraq as a business opportunity.
Iran, some language recently, you said if Iran were to strike Israel, there would be massive retaliation. Scary words. Does massive retaliation mean you'd go into Iran, you would bomb Iran? Is that what that's supposed to suggest?
Well, the question was, if Iran were to launch a nuclear attack on Israel, what would our response be? And I want the Iranians to know that if I'm the president, we will attack Iran. And I want them to understand that, because it does mean that they have to look very carefully at their society, because whatever stage of development they might be in their nuclear weapons program in the next 10 years, during which they might foolishly consider launching an attack on Israel, we would be able to totally obliterate them. That's a terrible thing to say, but those people who run Iran need to understand that, because that perhaps will deter them from doing something that would be reckless.
Transcript of your paid speeches to Goldman Sachs. No, there's a lot of controversy over their speeches.
Just in July, New Hampshire, you told the crowd you, quote, take a backseat to no one when it comes to progressive values.
I take a backseat to no one when you look at my record and standing up and fighting for progressive values.
Last month in Ohio, you said you plead guilty to, quote, being kind of moderate and center. Do you change your political identity based on who you're talking to?
No, I think that like most people that I know, I have a range of views, but they are rooted in my values and my experience.
You know, I get accused of being kind of moderate and center. I plead guilty.
Just for the record, are you a progressive or are you a moderate?
I'm a progressive. I represented Wall Street as a senator from New York, and I went to Wall Street in December of 2007, before the big crash that we had, and I basically said, cut it out. Quit foreclosing on homes. Quit engaging in these kinds of speculative behaviors.
Now, who's exactly to blame for the housing crisis? I think there's plenty of blame to go around. Home buyers who paid extra fees to avoid documenting their income should have known they were getting in over their heads.
Are you a progressive or are you a moderate?
I'm a progressive. Of course we have to deal with the problem that the banks are still too big to fail. We can never let the American taxpayer and middle-class families ever have to bail out the kind of speculative behavior that we saw. But we also have to worry about some of the other players. AIG, a big insurance company, Lehman Brothers, an investment bank. There's this whole area called shadow banking. That's where the experts tell me the next potential problem could come from.
You were against same-sex marriage, now you're for it. You defended President Obama's immigration policies, now you say they're too harsh. You supported his trade deal dozens of times. You even called it the gold standard. Now suddenly last week, you're against it. Will you say anything to get elected?
Well, actually, I have been very consistent over the course of my entire life.
Time and time again, you hear one thing in speeches, and then you see a campaign that has the worst kind of tactics, reminiscent of the same sort of Republican attacks on Democrats. Well, I am here to say that it is not only wrong, but it is undermining core democratic principles. Since when do Democrats attack one another on universal health care?
I've looked at the legislation that Senator Sanders has proposed, and basically he does eliminate the Affordable Care Act, eliminates private insurance, eliminates Medicare, eliminates Medicaid, TRICARE, Children's Health Insurance Program.
This is what drives people crazy. It drives them crazy. You know, why not just come out and lay it out? This is what makes people distrust not just these politicians, but Washington, but the administration, but anybody who even raises their hand and testifies under oath, believing you're not being straight with me.
In conclusion, Congress is supposed to provide oversight. The voters are supposed to provide oversight. And you were supposed to provide oversight. That's why you have special liberties, and that's why you have special protections. I am not surprised that the President of the United States called this a phony scandal. I'm not surprised that Secretary Clinton asked, what difference does it make? I'm not even surprised that Jay Carney said Benghazi happened a long time ago. I'm just surprised at how many people bought it.
It's my privilege to be here in Gettysburg, hallowed ground where so many lives were given in service to freedom. Amazing place. President Lincoln served in a time of division like we've never seen before. It is my hope that we can look at his example to heal the divisions we are living through right now. We are a very divided nation. I'm not a politician and have never wanted to be a politician. Believe me. But when I saw the trouble our country was in, I knew I couldn't stand by and watch any longer. Our country has been so good to me. I love our country, and I felt I had to act. I've seen the system up close and personal for many years. I've been a major part of it. I know how the game works in Washington and on Wall Street, and I know how they've rigged the rules of the game against everyday Americans. The rules are rigged. Nearly 1 in 4 Americans in their prime earning years isn't even working. 1 in 5 households have no one with a job. 45 million Americans are on food stamps, and 47 million are living in poverty. We have failed our inner cities, and in so doing, have failed our African American and Hispanic communities. We've misguided military adventures overseas and wars that go on forever that just cannot be won by the people that are doing it now. They don't know how to win the wars. At home, we have our great veterans dying while waiting for medical care. Change has to come from outside our very broken system. Our system is broken. The fact that Washington and the Washington establishment has tried so hard to stop our campaign is only more proof that our campaign represents the kind of change that only arrives once in a lifetime. The system is totally rigged and broken. First, the issue of voter fraud. According to Pew, there are 24 million voter registrations in the United States that are either invalid or significantly inaccurate. And when I say that, there are such inaccuracies, it's unbelievable. 1.8 million dead people are registered to vote, and some of them are voting. I wonder how that happens. 2.8 million people are registered in more than one state. These are numbers, folks. These are numbers. 14% of non-citizens are registered to vote. The system is also rigged because Hillary Clinton should have been precluded from running for the presidency of the United States. But the FBI and the Justice Department covered up her crimes, which included lying to the FBI and Congress on numerous occasions, and included saying, I do not recall, to the FBI on 39 separate times. She recalls everything else, but 39 separate times she said, I do not recall. Well, that's a lie also. Then there is the deletion of at least 33,000 emails after receiving a subpoena from the United States Congress. That's after receiving the subpoena. As an example, it was announced this week that the highly respected four-star general, James Cartwright, may be sentenced to up to 5 years in prison with a massive fine for lying on one occasion to the FBI. And he said he did that for national security reasons. Highly respected man, a four-star general. This took place 2 days ago. How must he feel? A big part of the rigging of this election is the fact that Hillary is being allowed to run despite having broken so many laws on so many different occasions. Why is she allowed to run? The dishonest mainstream media is also part, and a major part, of this corruption. They're corrupt. They lie and fabricate stories to make a candidate that is not their preferred choice look as bad and even dangerous as possible. At my rallies, they never show or talk about the massive crowd size and try to diminish all of our events. On the other hand, they don't show the small size of Hillary's crowds, but in fact talk about how many people are there. Very small crowds. You know it, they know it, everybody knows it. Over the last 2 days, 3 highly respected national polls said we're in first place. And one of those pollsters was the most accurate poll on the last 2 cycles. But the media refuses to even say it or put that word out. They refuse to talk about it. They're trying desperately to suppress my vote and the voice of the American people. As an example of the power structure I'm fighting, AT&T is buying Time Warner and thus CNN, a deal we will not approve in my administration because it's too much concentration of power in the hands of too few. Likewise, Amazon, which through its ownership controls the Washington Post, should be paying massive taxes, but it's not paying. And it's a very unfair playing field, and you see what that's happening and what that's doing to department stores all over the country. Very, very unfair, and you're talking about billions and billions of dollars. They should be paying those taxes. Additionally, Comcast's purchase of NBC concentrates far too much power in one massive entity that is trying to tell the voters think and what to do. Deals like this destroy democracy. And we'll look at breaking that deal up and other deals like that. This should never, ever have been approved in the first place. They're trying to poison the mind of the American voter. Every woman lied when they came forward to hurt my campaign. Total fabrication. The events never happened. Never. All of these liars after the election is over. But a simple phone call placed to the biggest newspapers or television networks gets them wall-to-wall coverage with virtually no fact-checking whatsoever. Here is why this is relevant to you. If they can fight somebody like me, who has unlimited resources to fight back, just look at what they can do to you, your jobs, your security, your education, your health care, the violation of religious liberty, the theft of your Second Amendment, the loss of your factories, your homes, and much more. Look at what they've done to you with your jobs. It has just been learned on video that the violent protests at some of my rallies, like in Chicago, where police and others were seriously hurt, you saw that, blood pouring down their face, were caused by paid DNC and Clinton campaign operatives. Now, we didn't know this. This just came out 2 days ago on tape. We didn't know this. We were amazed at the level of violence. These were paid operatives, paid by the DNC and probably the Clinton campaign. This is the criminal act. Policemen were badly hurt, and so were many others. And these people should be prosecuted. But because of the rigged system, they probably won't be. Just like we found out about these paid violent protesters, it was probably the DNC and the Clinton campaign that put forward these liars with their fabricated stories. But we'll find out about their involvement at a later date through litigation, and I look so forward to doing that. The rigging of the system is designed for one reason: to keep the corrupt establishment and special interests in power at your expense, at everybody's expense. I have no special interest but you, the American voter. I didn't have to do this, believe me. There's nothing easy about it. But I had to do it. I love our country. I love the people of our country. And I felt I had to do it. Thank you. One thing we all know is that we will never solve our problems by relying on the same politicians who created these problems in the first place. Hillary Clinton is not running against me. She's running against change. And she's running against all of the American people and all of the American voters. We now find ourselves at that very special fork in the road. Do we repeat the mistakes of the past, or do we choose to believe that a great future, yet unwritten, still lies ahead for us and for our wonderful, beloved country? I think it does. I know it does. My economic plan will deliver at least 25 million jobs in 1 decade. Now, our jobs have been taken away. They've gone to Mexico. They've gone to so many other countries. It's a one-lane highway where they get the jobs, they get the factories, they get the money, and we get the drugs, and we get the unemployment, and it's going to change, believe me, and it's going to change fast. And that goes for all countries. When you look at China, when you look at every country, every trade deal we have is horrible. And we should be ashamed of a people and the people that let those deals happen. They're defective, and they knew they were defective. And they were done for a reason. And believe me, they will be unwound so fast. And we will have trade. We will have great trade. And it'll be free trade. But it'll be fair trade, and it'll be real. My security plan, so important. They've taken the jobs from us. My security plan will bring safety to our poorest communities. My ethics plan will end the corruption in our government. We will... The corruption is massive. We will drain the swamp in Washington, D.C. and replace it with a new government of, by, and for the people. Believe me. That is why I have chosen Gettysburg to unveil this contract. I'm asking the American people to rise above the noise and the clutter of our broken politics and to embrace that great faith and optimism that has always been the central ingredient in the American character. And there's nothing better or stronger than the American character. I am asking the American people to dream big once again. What follows is my 100-day action plan to make America great again. It's a contract between Donald J. Trump and the American voter, and it begins with bringing honesty, accountability, and change to Washington, D.C. Therefore, on the first day of my term of office, my administration will immediately pursue the following 6 measures to clean up the corruption and special interest collusion in Washington. First, a constitutional amendment to impose term limits on all members of Congress. Second, a hiring freeze on all federal employees to reduce federal workforce through attrition, exempting military, public safety, and public health. Third, a requirement that for every new federal regulation, 2 existing regulations must be eliminated. Regulations are killing our country and our jobs. Fourth, a 5-year ban on White House and congressional officials becoming lobbyists after they leave government service, making a fortune. Fifth, a lifetime ban on White House officials lobbying on behalf of a foreign government. Very bad. Six, a complete ban on foreign lobbyists raising money for American elections. That's what's happening. On the same day, I will begin taking strongly 7 actions to protect American workers. Our American workers have been treated so badly by politicians that don't have their interest in heart. And we're going to change that. We're going to change that very, very fast. First, I will announce my intention to totally renegotiate NAFTA, one of the worst deals our country has ever made, signed by Bill Clinton, or withdraw from the deal under Article 2205. Second, I will announce our withdrawal from the Trans-Pacific Partnership, a potential disaster for our country. Third, I will direct my Secretary of the Treasury to label China a currency manipulator. China is a currency manipulator. What they have done to us by playing currency is very sad, and I don't blame them. They've been very smart. I blame our politicians for letting this take place. So easy to stop. So easy to stop. Fourth, I will direct the Secretary of Commerce and U.S. Trade Representative to identify all foreign trading abuses that unfairly impact American workers and direct them to use every tool under American and international law to end those abuses immediately. Fifth, very importantly, I will lift the restrictions on the production of $50 trillion worth of job-producing American energy reserves, including shale, oil, natural gas, and clean coal, and we will put our miners back to work. Sixth, I will lift the Obama-Clinton roadblocks that allow for this vital energy infrastructure projects to go forward. We have roadblocks like you've never, ever seen. Environmental blocks, structural blocks. we're going to allow the Keystone Pipeline and so many other things to move forward. Tremendous numbers of jobs and good for our country. We're going to cancel billions in payments to the United Nations climate change programs and use the money to fix America's water and environmental infrastructure. We're paying billions and billions and billions of dollars. We're going to fix our own environment. Additionally, on the first day, I will take the following 5 actions to restore security and constitutional rule of law. We have to do that. Cancel every unconstitutional executive action, memorandum, and order issued by President Obama. Second, begin the process of selecting a replacement for Justice Scalia, whose wife, by the way, has a Trump sign. His wife is a phenomenal woman. Has a Trump sign in her front yard. Isn't that nice? I just found that out this morning. Boom. Isn't that nice? He was great. From one of the 20 judges on my list, you know we're going to make great decisions from 20 outstanding judges on a list that we submitted, who will uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States. Third, we will cancel all federal funding of sanctuary cities. Fourth, we will begin removing the more than 2 million criminal illegal immigrants from the country. These are drug dealers, gang heads, gang members, killers, and cancel visas to foreign countries that won't take them back. And when Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, and they had someone who was bad, really bad, and they brought him back to the country and the country wouldn't take him, she said, well, bring him back. We don't want to force the country to take him. There won't be one such instance if I become president, believe me. We're going to suspend immigration from terror-prone regions where vetting cannot safely occur. And if you look at Syria and the migration, we're taking in thousands and thousands of people into our country. We have no idea who they are, what their thought process is, where they come from. And Hillary Clinton wants to increase the number of those thousands and thousands currently pouring in by 550%. Radical Islamic terror is right around the corner. We have to be so tough, so smart, so vigilant. We can't allow that to happen. We have enough problems. All vetting of people coming into our country will be considered extreme vetting. We will be very careful. Next, I will work with Congress to introduce the following broader legislative measures and fight for their passage within the first 100 days of my administration. Middle Class Tax Relief and Simplification Act. An economic plan designed to grow the economy 4% per year and create at least 25 million new jobs through massive tax reduction and simplification in combination with trade reform, regulatory relief, and lifting the restrictions on American energy. Need that so badly. Jobs. We need jobs. Our jobs have left us. Our good jobs have really left us. The largest tax reductions are for the middle class, who have been forgotten. It's called the forgotten man and woman. They have been forgotten. The middle class with family of 2 children will get basically approximately a 35% tax cut, and that's what they can use, and that money will go back into the economy. The current number of brackets will be reduced from 7 to 3, and tax forms will likewise be greatly simplified. The business rate will be lowered from 35% to 15%, and the trillions of dollars of American corporate money overseas can now be brought back at a 10% rate. It's stuck. We can't bring it back. $2.5 to $5 trillion. Companies can't get it back into the country. Some companies are actually leaving, not only because taxes are so high, but because they can't get their money, and they are actually leaving to get their money. We are going to simplify that. We're going to have them bring to our country and use the money and spend the money on building our country. End the Offshoring Act. Establish tariffs to discourage companies from laying off their workers in order to relocate in other countries and ship their products back to the United States tax-free. They leave the United States, like Carrier, like Ford, like so many others. They leave the United States. They fire all of their employees. They go to Mexico or another country. They build a beautiful brand new plant. They hire other people. They then take their air conditioners, their cars, whatever they're making. They send it tax-free across what will be a very strong border, believe me. But they send it tax-free across the border. And what do we end up with? We have unemployment, tremendous losses, and we have none of the benefits. So we will establish tariffs that when they do that, there will be consequences. We'll work with them, we'll be nice, we'll be fair, but there have to be consequences. And when they know there are consequences, our companies will stop leaving the United States and going to other countries. The American Infrastructure Act leverages public-private partnerships and private investments through tax incentives to spur $1 trillion in infrastructure investment over the next 10 years. Our infrastructure is in such trouble. We've doubled our national debt to $20 trillion under President Obama. In less than 8 years, $10 trillion has been added. Think of it. And we haven't fixed anything. We haven't fixed anything. What have we done? Our roads are broken, our bridges, our tunnels, our hospitals, our schools, and we have $20 trillion in debt, all-time high. That's true. Our VA hospitals are in bad shape, and our VA is in very, very bad shape, and we will fix that. We are going to work on fixing that because our veterans have not been treated properly. We have illegal immigrants that are treated far better in many instances than our veterans, and we're not going to have that. School Choice and Education Opportunity Act redirects education dollars to give parents the right to send their children, to public, private, charter, magnet, religious, or home schools of their choice. And so importantly, we're going to end Common Core and bring education supervision to local communities. We do so badly on education. If you look at the lists and you see Sweden, Norway, Denmark, China, different countries at the top, you see us at the bottom. And yet, by far, per pupil, more money than anybody, and it's not even close. We spend more money per pupil than anybody, not even close. We're at the bottom of the list. Other countries spending far less per pupil are at the top of the list. So obviously, our current system is not working. We will change it, and we will make it good. It expands vocational and technical education, which we've totally forgotten about in this country, and make 2- and 4-year colleges more affordable. Have you ever gone to school and you've been with people that aren't good students? but they can fix an engine, or they can build a wall, or they can do things that you wouldn't even think about. Because we can use some of the ones that build the wall. We're going to need them. We're going to need them. We're going to need them. But did you ever see that? How they're genius at fixing a car. They can do anything. But history, not so good. Physics, not so good. I mean, we have to open vocational again. Those are the people. These are great people. The Repeal and Replace Obamacare Act. Fully repeal Obamacare and replace it with health savings accounts. So we could do that. The health savings accounts, it's one way. There are numerous ways. But this is one very good way. The ability to purchase health insurance across state lines, which we have to do because that's competition. The politicians won't let go of it because the insurance companies, they don't want competition. But we'll open it up. Believe me, we'll get rid of that. I've been saying it for years. And let states manage Medicaid funds. It will be so good. Reforms will also include cutting the red tape at the FDA. There are over 4,000 drugs awaiting approval, and we especially want to speed the approval of life-saving medications. I mean, they're looking at drugs that are looking very good, and you have terminal patients that it's over. These people, they're dying. They want to get the drug. They won't be living much longer. And we study it for years and years. At some point, they have to do what they have to do. They have to do it properly. But we have 4,000 different drugs and products waiting on line for approval, and we can't get them approved. We're going to speed up that process very significantly. Affordable Child Care and Elder Care Act allows Americans to deduct child care and elder care from their taxes, incentivizes employers to provide on-site, and so important, child care services. And you see that with a couple of companies, and it's such a great thing to see. And creates tax-free dependent care savings accounts for both young and elderly dependents with matching contributions for low-income families. So good. End Illegal Immigration Act. Fully funds the construction of a wall on our southern border. Don't worry about it. Remember, I said Mexico's paying for the wall. With the full understanding that the country of Mexico will be reimbursing the United States for the full cost of such a wall, okay? We're going to have the wall. Mexico's going to pay for the wall. Mexico's, by the way, I met with the president of Mexico 2.5 months ago. Wonderful meeting, wonderful person. But I told him, this is a two-way highway, not a one-way highway. We have our people. We have to take care of our people. We have to protect our people. So it's got to be a two-way street. Otherwise, it's going to be a whole different deal. But it establishes a 2-year mandatory minimum federal prison sentence. This is people coming in illegally for illegally re-entering the United States after a previous deportation, and a 5-year mandatory minimum for illegally re-entering for those with felony convictions, multiple misdemeanor convictions, or 2 or more prior deportations. So when somebody comes in, we send them out. They come back in, they go to prison for quite a while. They come back again, they go 5 years. Because what's happening is they're coming back 10 times. And I could go case after case. They come back, look at what happened in San Francisco. 5 times he came back. On the 5th time he killed Kate. 5 times. But so many others. 10 times came back. Killed somebody after 10 times. When they get deported, they stay out. Otherwise, they have very serious prison terms. They will stay out. Once you do that, they will stay out. Right now, they have no consequence. They have no consequences. Also, reforms on visa rules to enhance penalties for overstaying and to ensure open jobs are offered to American workers first. Number 8, Restoring Community Safety Act reduces surging crime, drugs, and violence by creating a task force on violent crime and increasing funding for programs that train and assist your local police who are doing such a great job, believe me. We increase the resources for federal law enforcement agencies and federal prosecutors to dismantle criminal gangs and put violent offenders behind bars or out of our country and into the country where they came from. Restoring National Security Act, which rebuilds our military by eliminating the defense sequester, which has been very tough on our military, and expanding military investment. Now, at no time, practically, do we need a military like right now. We don't want to use it, but it's peace through strength. We need a strong military. Our military is so terribly depleted. It also provides our great veterans with the ability to receive public VA treatment or attend a private doctor of their choice. If they're waiting online, and I have the plan up, and we've gotten, as you know, tremendous support from veterans, from law enforcement, from veterans, from the military, tremendous support. But if they're waiting online, and you see it, 22 suicides a day, people don't even believe it, 22 a day. But if they're waiting online for 7 days, 6 days, 9 days, they can't get to see a doctor, and a simple procedure or a simple prescription can solve their problem, and they become very sick, and they die. They die waiting in line. We're going to give them the power to go across the street to a local doctor, a private doctor, a public hospital, or a private hospital, all looking to help and all looking to do business, and we'll pay the bill. So much cheaper, but much more importantly, the veterans will finally be taken care of properly, because what they're going through now is unacceptable. Also, we're going to protect our vital infrastructure from the new thing. It's called cyber attack. It establishes new screening procedures for immigration to ensure those who are admitted to our country support our people and our values. We want people that love our country or can love our country, and people that will love our citizens. We want people that can love us. And there are ways through talent of determining that, and other countries do, but we don't. Just come on in, folks, come on in. Clean up corruption in Washington Act enacts tough new ethic reforms to reduce the corrupting influence of special interests and donors on our politics. On November 8th, Americans will be voting for this 100-day plan to restore prosperity to our country, secure our communities, and honesty to our government. This is my pledge to you. And if we follow these steps, we will once more have a government of, by, and for the people. And importantly, we will make America great again. Believe me. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, there have now been 2 nights of protests across the US, and police are gearing up for more. Crowds have been marching through Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., New York, and Chicago, among many others. The protests mainly proving to be peaceful thus far, but keeping an eye on it. Police have had to move into some of them, which have threatened to turn rowdy. One of the groups organising anti-Trump rallies is called Move On. It's calling for action and demonstrations against the president-elect nationwide. However, Move On apparently has ties to billionaire investor George Soros. There's a name to conjure with. That information came to light from the emails leaked by WikiLeaks from Hillary Clinton campaign chairman John Podesta. In the leaked emails, Soros is told about activists who need funding, with the Move On group highlighted. Interesting turn of events. Let's talk live to Marco Gasic, international affairs commentator. Mark, what's the fuss about here? Trump, whether you like him or not, was elected fairly and squarely by the looks of it. Nobody's saying the votes were rigged. Nobody's saying there's anything underhand here. Don't people just simply have to accept that that's the way it is? Democracy played out. The majority of the people wanted it. Well, thereabouts. And there he is.
Yeah, well, I would certainly agree, Kevin. In essence, what the opponents of Trump now are doing is exactly what they accused him of planning to do if he lost, which is disputing the results of an entirely fair election. It's an election where they've had all the media power and more of the money, and yet they've lost to him and to the voice of those ordinary people in the American shires who are normally ignored and forgotten. So they've spoken up, as in the UK earlier. So it's a kind of almost a tussle now between the Clinton-Soros view, which is that the only democracy that's allowed is a one-party democracy that agrees with what you say, and or rather with what they say. And if that doesn't happen, then they're ready to do a colour revolution to destroy that democracy and that democratic vote.
I was going to say,
and they've done it abroad. Now they're doing it at home.
Are these genuine protesters, or going on from what I was saying just now? You know, given these latest WikiLeaks revelations about funding activists, could they be activists that are funded, stirring it up, not genuinely people that are genuinely aggrieved with the democratic process?
Well, I think it's those who are stirring it up, and they do. Many of them work for George Soros's front organisations. Are really telling those innocent protesters and perhaps less innocent protesters that they're in danger, that they're endangered by Trump, even though Trump has done nothing but preach unity since he actually won the election. So it's clear that what they object to in Trump, that's to say what the globalist elite object to in Trump, is perhaps something else other than the things they're telling the protesters about. And I think what they really want, I don't think they really imagine they're going to get rid of Trump, but what they want to do is to intimidate him into agreeing to settle for social peace at home, as long as the globalist elites are allowed to pursue their continuing wars abroad. And so really it's a trade-off where in effect they want him to throw in the towel and become a neocon just like they are.
We're showing our viewers one of the protesters in the streets. They're saying that Trump should be assassinated. Okay, maybe she made that off the cuff, maybe whatever, but is it going to turn that way? Is it going to get more and more violent, or is this all going to die down?
That, I think, is the $64,000 question, but effectively that sense of inevitability of the kind of Western liberal globalist movement has been brought short by the return of a traditionalist kind of old white male, and it's something that they find intolerable. But as I say, if and as you say indeed, the election was fought in a fair way, a relatively fair way, slightly to the detriment of Donald Trump, who didn't make things easier for himself with some of his sound bites. But now that the election has been fought and won by him, they should put up or shut up.
Well, now California is saying they would like to reject these results. They say it's not consistent with the state's values. I mean, on the legal side of it, how can they say that? He won this election fair and square by the rules. What are they talking about there?
I think we're talking about someone stirring the pot there, because America has never traditionally had a problem with accepting the results of elections. We now have, as I say, Soros behind many colour revolutions in other countries, are now financing, in effect, a kind of semi-colour revolution in the US. I don't know whether it categorises as treason, but he certainly operates from the shadows, in the shadows. His only legitimacy is his wallet, and his only concern is to create the kind of democracy that he can prop up and gain an interest from. So that's the kind of person who's behind this continuing protest against what, at the end of the day, was a valid, legitimate, free and fair election.
Obama's not said too much about this trouble that's brewing at the moment. Do you think he will step in? I mean, what can he say? Maybe he's trying to stay out of it so it doesn't get stoked up any further. What response, if any, are we expecting from him soon?
Well, I think that President Obama has the power morally, in a sense, through his popularity, to actually considerably stop and dampen down these tensions. But I think he's quite pleased in the short term that they're happening, and then he will finally turn up and, in a slightly moderate voice, ask for some more calmness. But actually, he should really be much quicker about his reaction, because it is the fundamentals of American democracy that are being threatened here. If little groups disagree with an election, the idea that they can then demonstrate their way into political power is in effect trying to turn the US into the banana republic that so many other states have had happen to them as a result of the efforts of previous American administrations. Some might say it's the sauce for what's sauce for the goose is sauce. Well, there's a phrase about it anyway.
Yeah,
the point is poetic justice. I think is the essence of it.
Marco Gassick, international affairs commentator. Thanks for your time today. Have a good evening.